We got this one from Fox News, ladies and gentlemen. This is probably the biggest bombshell out of the Devon Archer testimony. I mean, that's actually hard to say because we know that in this testimony, we learned Joe Biden was on the phone 20 plus times in these business meetings while VP. But this one is shocking. Devon Archer says Hunter Biden and Burisma execs called D.C. to get Ukrainian prosecutor fired. Devon Archer testified for hours. Devon Archer testified Monday that Hunter Biden and top execs called D.C. in 2015 to ask the Obama administration to help fire the Ukrainian prosecutor investigating the firm. A source familiar with his testimony told Fox News Digital. And they lied. But ladies and gentlemen, we got Joe Biden right here admitting to all of it.
Happened to be that was the assignment I got. I got all the good ones. So I got Ukraine. And I remember going over convincing our team or others to convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion.
Jesus.
I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. I got fired.
And there it is right there. Shout out to DC Drano for that video, which has been circulating some time. He reposted it today. So that argument we heard over and over again from liberals that it was just U.S. policy to fire that prosecutor. Now, I got to say, that was never backed up by anything. Why did the U.S. want the prosecutor fired?
So I argued about this like years ago, whenever this came out, with a kind of a mainstream liberal friend of mine. And he said what you just said. He was like, the entire, like everyone in like the U.S. establishment agreed that this guy had to go. And this kind of debunks that. It's saying Burisma gave him a call and said, no. So the impetus came from Burisma.
But this makes sense. If you look at Burisma as an arm of U.S. interests, Burisma acting as U.S. policy interests called D.C. and says, if you want us to keep operating, this guy's got to go because he's investigating us. So simply put, you could say it was U.S. policy. There was a former CIA director on the board of Burisma, as well as the vice president's son. So of course it was our policy. We were running the show. But when you get to the brass tacks of it, corrupt institutions which were enriching people's private interests called up their buddies in D.C. or their dad and said, this guy is getting in the way to 10% for the big guy. So we've got Tony Bobulinski. This is one of the Hunter Biden associates saying outright, he's in on it. You've got the emails, 10% held by what does it say, HB for the big guy? Is that what it said?
Was that Burisma, though, or is that the China thing?
10% for the big guy, I think, was a China deal. My point specifically, though, is we can see in these business dealings, there is evidence that Joe Biden is personally benefiting. We also have the text from Hunter Biden where he said something to the effect of dad taking his salary or things like that. Right. So he's acting as a proxy for Joe Biden while Joe Biden was in government. Joe Biden personally goes and gets the prosecutor fired who was investigating the company where his son was getting $83,000 a month. There it is. Devon Archer testified before Congress.
And the huge thing, so but also real quick, like if you just watch that clip and just like listen to Joe Biden's tone in that clip, like it's like he's just like acting like he's like talking to like his nephew. He's just like I don't know. He's so brazenly bragging. He's just like I gotta leave in about 6 minutes. I got a flight to catch. Why don't you fire that guy? He's like. He sounds like a mafia guy who's like proud of like.
That's just probably. It really does sound like a line written for like a
mafia movie.
Yeah,
he's like,
listen, Joe, if you don't fire a guy in 6 minutes, you ain't getting the money.
Yeah, he's like talking shit just publicly about what Trump was impeached over.
That speaks to the way that politics in Washington D.C. is handled generally, though. I mean, or I would believe that would lead me to believe because he
doesn't think it's a big deal.
Exactly, it's no problem. It's very normal for him. It comes off as, obviously this is the case.
Yeah.
This wasn't the first time that he behaved like that or whatever. So I mean, it does speak to the the tenor and,
Yeah,
and the way
yeah.
business is done, not just with Washington, but obviously internationally as well. And the U.S., if the U.S. has one of the less corrupt governments on earth, which I don't know for sure if it does or not, but I know there are places that are a real mess. But if the U.S. does have a less corrupt government, and that's the way that business is handled among, someone that was the vice president who'd been in D.C. for 45 years at that point or whatever, then that
Just imagine the rest of the world.
yeah, the rest of the world's a mess, and Ukraine is a absolute pigsty because everyone knows that Ukraine everyone is aware of the story or narrative that Ukraine is one of the most corrupt governments in the world.
100%. And I don't know, but I would assume Russia is too. But like, that's why it's so crazy that like we're involved in this war in the first place, because we're talking about two very corrupt, very authoritarian, which we can get into like pre-war Zelensky's authoritarian tendencies. But like why the U.S. seems to think it needs to have a dog in this fight of like, why do we care which corrupt oligarch rules over Crimea or the Donbass? It's like, we shouldn't really care. They're both like horribly corrupt countries to begin with. But what's interesting from this stuff, and then there was Chuck Grassley on the Senate floor the other day who talked about one of these, I think Burisma associates or one of Hunter Biden's associates in Ukraine had recorded 19 phone calls, 17 with Hunter Biden, 2 with Joe Biden, for the purpose of blackmail. This was Chuck Grassley saying this. I don't know if he produced any like documentation for it, but so and why that's scary is like, could our president be blackmailed into supporting this war?
Yes.
And the idea and World War III is a real risk from this war. So like the implications of like, I mean,
Russia is not viewing this as Russia versus Ukraine. Their pundits, all their personalities are saying NATO versus Russia. So they're very much viewing this as international conflict. And it's only the most naive or the most duplicitous individuals who say, we are not at war with Russia. We absolutely are. You don't get to provide weapons, training, military, and volunteers, and then be like, but we have nothing to do with this war.
Yeah, no, and I agree. And it's even worse because, like, I think it's still a majority. We can maybe pull up the polls if they're up there, but, like, how many Americans still support the Ukraine war? And I think it's a majority. And obviously these people think, we're fighting for democracy, we're fighting to protect international borders. But, like, if the truth were to come out that it's like, we're fighting because, like, they have dirt on Joe Biden, and we're literally risking the entire world, and they might have. Okay, there's the.
This is
stats.
Gallup from 1 month ago. 62% in June 2023 support Ukraine reclaiming territory. However, it is going down.
Slowly going down. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think hopefully what would bring that bar to the left more would be, educating people on the real reasons we're at war. And I don't know if it's because they have blackmail on Joe Biden.
No,
it could just be
no.
Geopolitical, like fucking, the neocons.
It is very much wanting to gain access to energy for Europe, to expand the European economy.
And
the
if
European economy is stagnating.
If you can supply weapons to Ukraine to damage Russia's military, that's good for the U.S.
But they say that, but I don't get why that's good for the U.S. Like, why is that an end? Why is weakening Russia, which by the way means killing like young men on the battlefield? Why is that an end to the U.S.? And I once, I was on, I don't know if we published this, but I was on Capitol Hill and I asked this to Dan Crenshaw. He was like, hey, we're weakening a strategic adversary. And I was like, well, why are they a strategic adversary? And he was just like, oh, you're pro-Russia. I'll see you later. And it's like, no, I'm just like, I don't want to blow up the world.
Because they're a BRICS nation. They want to get off the U.S. petrodollar. They want to create their own rival currency. They're starting to, and the U.S. views that as a big threat. Russia is the easier target out of the bunch. China is too large. Yeah. So in the meantime, NATO expands its presence in Europe, gains more control, bolsters the European economy to compete with the Chinese economic bloc, and Russia, being the easier target, goes after them right now.
But the funny thing is, they didn't used to be in BRICS, and they didn't used to be trying to get another currency. Like, why were they our strategic enemy ever? I don't understand.
Russia?
After the Soviets fell, it was like, yo, that's
let us
our
go
best
back in
opportunity.
time, my friend.
Yeah, let's go to
A long way.
1993. What the hell's going on? We're supposed
Yeah,
to not
you
be
keep
encroaching.
going back. It's never just because the Soviet Union collapsed doesn't mean that the sentiments and the people there, their worlds changed. For a lot of people, the world did change, don't get me wrong. But for powerful individuals, political leaders, and the oligarchs who are seizing control, they were born and bred of this world, East versus West. So you can go all the way back and keep going back in time to find where the dawn of conflict emerges. But U.S. interests competing with foreign interests, and the U.S. has been, in many ways, losing this in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of it has to do with there is the fact that being a constitutional republic weakens us in terms of executive action. The Chinese Communist Party snaps their fingers and they get things done. They build a bridge overnight. Why? Because if you don't do it, you get locked in the gulag, or they're,
But then they also build
a
a bunch of empty apartment buildings that have to get torn down because, central planning is, it's inefficient, or it's, you're at the
Sure, but they're
talking
using,
about ghost cities?
They're using a combination of the two. They have so this is an interesting merger between the total communist authoritarianism and having a little bit of low-tier, low-level economic activity be allowed. So this results in some kind of capitalistic growth, but you've got to be a member of the party. The party's got to be in
Fascism.
your company. Yeah, essentially, right?
Yep.
So the U.S., I would say, my view of Joe Biden or any of these presidents, save Trump, in my lifetime, it's the intelligence agencies that are running everything. And I think it's fairly obvious. And the way we've always described it, and even for Barack Obama, is that he's like, when I get in office, we're going to bring our troops back. And then as soon as he gets in office, he sits down and they go, Mr. President, and they slap the documents in front of him and say, this is why you'll do as you're told. And then anybody who says otherwise, they just slide a picture of JFK right up and say, once again, this is why you'll do what you're told. Mm-hmm. So I do think I think the intelligence agencies behind the scenes, first, most of what we think we know is probably wrong. The news we're reading is probably wrong. Come on. We know they lie all the time. And we're still trying to base our perception on this war off of all of this stuff and what Joe Biden is doing. I do think the people at the CIA and the FBI want the U.S. to win and would prefer it if all of our lives were better. However, in terms of conflict, we are just assets on a battlefield. We are economic numbers. So freedom doesn't matter. Our rights doesn't matter. The Constitution doesn't matter. All that matters is the global sphere of influence for U.S. and Western interest.
But even if you're at the CIA and you think in these terms and you want to maintain the petrodollar, which makes sense why you want to maintain the petrodollar. But the risks, they don't think of the risks of why is the Donbass worth risking nuclear war if you're the CIA?
It could give Russia carte blanche access to the Black Sea through Crimea.
They already
and
have
East. But if they really solidify it, that means that they're going to make Turkey become their ally. And that's a threat that Turkey will leave NATO, because Turkey is the exit from the Black Sea into the Mediterranean, and you can't get out without Turkey.
If Turkey got out of NATO.
Oh,
Yeah.
it would be
That would be the end of everything. If Turkey leaves NATO and joins BRICS, I mean, we basically bifurcated the Earth into two hemispheres.
Why do you say
nuclear power.
that? What makes you think
because
that?
Turkey
They control the Bosphorus.
Yeah.
What?
They control the Bosphorus. They control the strait into the Mediterranean from the Black Sea. I mean, that's tons of economic activity for Europe that will be that is under control of Turkey. So long as Turkey is working with NATO, we have that advantage.
Yeah, but I mean, I
but
don't.
Phil,
just having Turkey not in NATO doesn't mean that Turkey automatically will shut off the canal.
No. I mean, if Turkey sides with BRICS, if Turkey does say to the West, you are now on the let's just say the not nice end of the stick, that's going to put more pressure on us. The issue with, when I look at Ukraine, we got to go back, and the place I typically start, and it goes back much further than this, obviously, is the Qatar-Turkey pipeline, Syria. The U.S. and our interests in the Middle East obviously were a conflict between the U.S. and Russia. I mean, even going back to the Mujahideen, the support of these groups so that they could fight the Soviets, etc., we're still in there for very similar reasons. Why is it that Syria falls into civil war? How convenient for the United States. When we were facing obstruction from Bashar al-Assad, all of a sudden the country is collapsing. Well, we want to build a pipeline. Pipeline would have gone to Europe, offset Russia's Gazprom monopoly, and would have helped bolster energy and expansion, economic expansion in Europe. All of this stuff ties together. It's no surprise that there's a counterterrorism official from the CIA, a director who is now on the board of Burisma, an energy company. Hunter Biden joins that board. It's U.S. interest to stop the prosecutor investigating it. This is all about, I think they're looking at hard energy expansion economic numbers. They're saying we want X amount of growth over this many years. They're looking at it like Russia is growing at this pace, China's growing at this pace. They're working together. If we do not have X amount of growth, they take over. Thucydides' trap, World War III, we lose. Chinese Communist Party wins.
Okay, but so if you take a step back, even if you're still at the CIA looking through their perspective, and you take a step back and you look at like how things have gone over the last like 20 years with all of these, regime change efforts we undergo, we spend like trillions of dollars and we just completely destroy these countries that we were hoping to kind of control. And then you look at Afghanistan, like we pull out anyways. So it's like,
but you're missing the bigger picture.
We don't have a good track record.
Do we destroy the countries that agree to our control? No. The countries that bend the knee and kiss the pinky ring, we never hear about invasions or coup d'etat or anything like that because they did as they were told. It's the countries that defy the U.S., and not just the U.S., but Western powers that face these, we came, we saw, he died. That's how Hillary Clinton described it.
About Gaddafi in Libya.
Right.
Yeah.
So a reason will be made, and the people who don't fall in line do as they're told.
So what I was going to say is like, because you kind of said the goal is like control and money, which I guess are two different things. But if they just wanted money, if the people at these defense companies and CIA wherever want money, it's like, why don't they just? I mean, like we spent. Well, I thought you said that, but
economic expansion, right?
Yeah.
They want to see the sphere of influence of Western nations expand and maintain a unipolar domination on the planet, on Earth. China is pushing that boundary, and we are now very likely, I think it's safe to say, we are a multipolar world, meaning we now have the rise of multiple superpowers, which brings the very real risk of mass conflict and war. After World War II, we saw the rise of the liberal economic order. The intention was to prevent this from happening again. They tried it with the League of Nations, United Nations. They want
so on that point, like
control.
they created it to prevent this from happening again. But now the evidence seems overwhelming that like it's the driving force for why it's happening again.
Always.
And so
there's no simple answer to it.
This exercise has been like difficult for me because my brain does not work. I imagine like any of these people at the CIA, but like why they need to dominate and influence the entire world when it's like, look at this amazing landmass we have over here on like, the Western hemisphere. It's like, why can't we just like enjoy this and live on our farm and like take it easy, especially these guys at the top who have all the control in the world.
I agree, but they've made the argument very clear. China will not stop. They're trying to take the South China Sea. They're building military bases on these.
Yeah, but they're not going to come here. They're not going to come here.
Well,
but what about Alaska? What about the Aleutians? It's a question of will they come here or will they expand their influence into Africa, which they're already doing, South America, the Belt and Road Initiative, and then all of a sudden in the U.S. we are constrained and can't get access to certain resources. That is their view, and they say it plainly. Right. I'm not saying they're right, but they've made their argument very clear.
But also Belt and Road is like military bases. Like Belt and Road is them like, getting countries in debt, which you can say is like done
the U.S. Western model.
Right, but I mean, like they're building infrastructure, or they're like influencing them to like on international to vote with them on international organizations. But like they only have like I think they only have like 2 or 3 foreign military bases, and they're like artificial islands near China. We have military bases all over. That's what I'm saying is like, why are we so worried about China when they don't yet have all these foreign military bases?
That's why, because they're expanding.
It's kind of like,
but not militarily.
But
they are. And you're saying it's a small number, but that doesn't matter. What matters is they are. That's it. The intelligence agencies.
But we have troops in Taiwan. We have troops in the Philippines and base.
That's not an argument.
No, but it's like, why do you think they're doing it? Maybe because maybe we could talk to them and say, hey, guys, don't build this base on this artificial island. We'll pull our troops out of Taiwan. You know what I mean? So negotiations could happen to prevent it, as opposed to like
right. But you're not making
warmongering.
You're not making an argument. It's simple. There's a unipolar power structure where the West controls things through economics and through conflict, and those that don't fall in line, Hillary Clinton, we came, we saw, he died. That's what happens. China starts expanding. Russia teams up with them. This is a threat. It doesn't matter if they've it doesn't matter if the guy across the street threw one rock at you. The moment he does, you call the police and say, I will not stand for this. Now you can argue that the guy with the rock threw it at a guy who's got 17 tanks and a bunch of RPGs lined up. But either way, they're going to be like, oh, he's throwing rocks at us.
Right.
China is expanding in certain areas. Their influence is growing. Their economy is growing. It is a threat to the U.S. We are now facing a multipolar world. And I view it like after World War II, you get the liberal economic order. You get these powerful elites who are like, we are going to use this position to control everything and prevent this from happening. They pass it down to their kids, the next generation, who start to slowly screw things up, who pass it down to their kids who have no idea what the hell they're doing and have fumbled the whole thing. And now we are facing a massive crisis. But these people inherited this. They don't know better. So they're just thinking, we better fight this war to prevent it from happening somewhere else. And you're like, okay, well, look, there's two outcomes. I suppose the parent tree is we do nothing. Thucydides' trap dictates the likelihood of World War III is tremendous. And then war happens. Or we just start it all now. Push back and hope that holding back Russia from the Donbass and putting pressure on China stops the expansion and we don't end up in a Thucydides trap.
Yeah, I don't see. Well, in Ukraine specifically, like, do you see Russia? Well, certainly not Crimea. I think there's no shot Russia leaves Crimea. There's 2 million Russian civilians who live there,
and it's basically been Russia. We had, I think it was Dave Smith, I think it was Dave Smith who mentioned Russia didn't invade and take over Crimea.
Yeah,
they stepped out the door of the military base and said, hi, guys.
I think like 3 people died or something.
But it's not that. The point is that they already had a military presence there.
No, I know.
So it was that they walked out of the military base and said, how's it going, everybody? We're all
And I think
still
they've actually
here.
had that base for hundreds of years.
That's right.
But so it like, and then I just hope there's people in the U.S. who like understand that and are like, oh yeah, we're just waiting to play that card of like, you
Nobody
guys can
knows
keep
any of
Crimea.
this stuff.
Well, what do you mean?
You go talk to the average person, average liberal. Look, man.
No. I'm talking about people in the top brass of the U.S.
Right.
Yeah.
The challenge with those who support all this is that you go and ask any liberal who's waving a Ukrainian flag, and they won't be able to tell you the first thing. They can't point to Ukraine on the map.
Yeah, I mean that was the whole Dan Crenshaw thing of just saying I'm pro-Russia when I tried to ask him, what.
It's just like it was like the war with Iraq and invasion of Afghanistan. It was like, are you with the terrorists or are you with us? It's like, dude, you want to invade a foreign country and kill their leader. I got questions. And they're like, well, then you support the terrorists. No, shut up.
Yeah.
But that's what they go for because the average person doesn't care, doesn't want to care, and doesn't want to pay attention. They want to play their games. They want to watch their shows. They want to see Taylor Swift. They don't want to deal with this stuff.
Yeah.
I don't blame them. Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.